would you be able to speak a little bit about any hurdles that you faced either as women or first-time founder in such a large industry?
First time founder, I think the biggest hurdle first time faced was I have no idea what I'm doing. Setting up a business, that's completely different from academia. But then when I sat down and thought about it, it's actually in a way very similar. Say if you're a young professor academic, you're trying to set up your lab, you're trying to set up your research group. It's almost like the same as the managing a team, balancing your budget. How do you recruit study subjects? It's all very similar. At the same time, I think there's a lot of learnings from both academia and industry that each can learn. So one example would be in academia, we don't really think about customer experience as much. But if you think about it, that when you recruit study subjects and when you're trying to retain study subjects and keeping them engaged, this is a huge part of customer engagement. And then it's a huge part of marketing that could be utilized. So I think that there's a lot of similarity, but at the same time, there's a lot of challenge. And other challenge would be, okay, how do you deal with lawyers? How do you figure out the lab logistics? How do you figure out shipping? How do you do your corporate taxes? And all these different topics that you kind of have to learn on the go. So those were quite challenging. And also not knowing about fundraising, how to actually properly do fundraising. That's also hard. In academia, we're so much relying on applying for grants, but in the industry as a startup, it's very different. How do you do a perfect pitch that attract VCs, venture capitalists attention to fund your company? How do you deal with the chicken and egg problem? If you need to show traction for them to give you money, but at the same time, you need the money to build a lab. So how do you deal with that? And lastly is also when you switch to industry, your relationship with academia completely changed. Then how do you deal with expectations from your previous colleagues? These were all kind of challenges. And then lastly, when it comes to fundraising, investors tend to give money to entrepreneurs already have experience. They call it, serial entrepreneurs. And if you have sold a company, obviously you have the track record, but how do you make people believe that you would be successful when you don't have that kind of track record? So I think those were those were the challenges that we face.
Jenna, it seems like you really, not rely, but you really take, it seems like you meet with lots and lots of people and you take their advice and you listen and you take everything you hear. And that's what I notice about why you are successful, is that you find the people you need to talk to, get that information, incorporate it into what we need, and just keep going to the next person that can help. And it just seems like that kind of effort is needed when you're a first-time founder.
Yes, we're pretty much just been hustling. I think like
hustling for advice.
Everybody's like hustling.
Yeah, hustling for advice, like and knowledge, basically. That's what it seems like to me. But you're very good at that, and I think that's why you've been so successful so far, and that will continue to be successful.
But I also think that it really takes a village to build this. Kind of like we mentioned, we need a toxicologist, we need biostatisticians, we need analytical chemists, we need software engineers, we need epidemiologists, we need everyone, we need marketers, right? And then we need doctors. We need everybody to be on our side to actually make this work. So it really takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, in juggling all these like various tasks, how did you prioritize your time in the beginning when you didn't have as wide of a team behind you?
I think when it comes to prioritizing, it's pretty much like what's immediately in front of you. When we first started, is if we want to provide a direct-to-consumer kit, what are the kit components? How do we do a pilot test? Where can we find a lab? that can give us like good pricing, and how do we figure out the logistics? And also, because this is direct to consumer test, we want to make sure we don't get into trouble with the FDA. So right now we're a wellness test, but eventually we want to get FDA approval so we could sell in the 4 states that does not allow direct to consumer test. So all these you kind of have to balance. So, but first is okay, let's figure out the kit first. So initially I was literally driving around the Bay Area and then picking up people's peas all over and trying to figure out, okay, do we want to use a pea cup or do we want to use a tube? So it took us like 4 different iterations to come up with the current kit design. The second is, okay, let's figure out shipping. So to ship to the customers, it doesn't require speed, but usual for shipping urine in research studies, everybody use dry ice, but you can't expect everyone without the scientific training to actually use dry ice because it will burn your skin. So then how do we deal with that? So we first tried using cold packs, but we realized even if you use overnight shipping, regardless of how much cold pack you use, it's still going to be dissolved. The sample will still be, not frozen. So it wouldn't be the lab standard. So then the next problem that we're trying to fix is, okay, do we actually need cold shipping? So we did stability testing in the lab showing that, okay, for these chemicals, we don't need cold shipping, but just in case, to ensure we get the sample as soon as possible, we use FedEx priority overnight. Then if you want to use FedEx priority overnight for a test like this, you started thinking about the cost. So how can we get good pricing for FedEx priority overnight? Because it's very expensive. If you go to FedEx and trying to ship something overnight, even a letter that could cost you $50, but we can't have $50 literally like adding to the cost. So then we found a biologistic company and actually get very good pricing for that. And that's how we kind of like getting started. It's like a one problem after another problem. So you see what's in front of you and then you prioritize that.
Yeah, deep rabbit hole. And you also had to grapple with the decision of like, do we use plastic cups, the exact same material that we're advocating against, or spend more time figuring out a better material even if it means like going away from plastic.
Oh yes, you worked on that, Tina, right? I remember.
So much happened in the beginning. Yeah, I just remember you having to really reconcile that kind of dilemma with the plastic cups, because it is it's easy for shipping, but how do we communicate why we're using the plastic cups with our consumers who are trying to avoid plastic?
Yes, we actually went very deep on that topic. It's still an ongoing discussion in the company and then with, our partners. So how, what kind of material do we actually put in our kit? Can we have a green kit? How much printing do we need to have on it? But the biggest problem to be solved is the urine P cup. So we actually contacted some leading researchers to ask their experience, what kind of cup they used. Yes, we wanted people to reduce plastics. The other alternative we could have is whether we use a glass cup or we use a metal cup. These cups can be reusable, but one leading researcher mentioned to us, in her experience, that her study participant did not want to use reused urine cup, because thinking about, someone have used this cup before and now I'm using it. The cup has contained someone else's pee and now I'm using it. So it's very gross to a study participant. So she didn't think that was reasonable. And when it comes to, glass or metal, glass would be very hard for shipping. Thinking about a package being thrown here and there, it could break during shipping. And if you think about metal, we went in pretty deep in terms of like the lid of your metal container, because even the metal is free of BPA and phthalates. Many times the sealants on top of the lid is usually made of phthalates. So then that could contaminate your sample. So we're like, okay, where can we find the actual lid that works? And then we weren't being able to find it. Then we even thought about using a silicone cup. And silicone, again, that we went into doing like pretty deep research that actually led to our silicone blog, is that not all silicones are created equal. So how do we find a good silicone cup? And how many times can you actually use a silicone cup? And then we looked into, okay, if you, in order to reuse all of these cups, that you have to do autoclaving, which is to sterilize after a person have used it. Then we started thinking about, if you actually autoclave these different cups, how much energy is consumed? How many times can you actually reuse it? And are you actually like saving carbon? And if you think about this concept of a life cycle analysis, are you actually saving money? Are you saving energy? Are you saving the planet? It's hard to say. So for now, our best alternative is still using a plastic pea cup. And I'm hopeful that future, new material companies could have, a biodegradable plastic that's sterilized. So we see a lot of cups and then utensils that are now made of a biodegradable plastic that, very green, that people use all the time, but none of those are sterilized and none of them have been used in medical supplies. So that's still unknown. I'm hoping there will be another company working on this that eventually we can partner with that provide us, green pea cups.
Yeah, we obviously spend a lot of time thinking about making sure our materials, say, represent our company and the boxes we use, the printing we use, all that stuff. So.
But we also have ideas for our next version of the box that we decided we'll use minimum printing, minimum design to reflect this value. And other than the pea cup, we can pretty much swap out every other component currently in the kit to be sustainable.
Yeah, I often think about how our service is an actual scientifically backed way to detox your life, because you can try to detox your body and try to get chemicals out of your body, but if you're still exposed to them, they'll go right back in. So if you figure out where you're getting these exposures from, you can actually detox your whole life, not just your body, but your environment.
Well, that's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope that this gives you a little bit more background about who we are, where we're coming from, and where we're going. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and thanks for listening.